Hey everybody, it is Trags Mike Petralia back with the latest episode of the Jungle Roar podcast, brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks and the Game Time app, and of course, CLNS Media. My pleasure to welcome back onto the app a regular to the program. That would be the one and only Richard Skinner of Local 12. You can follow him on the X at Local 12 Skinny. Skinny, what did you make of the big return of Al Golden, introduced officially Monday as the new defensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, a pretty no-nonsense guy, right? I mean, he came off as very no-nonsense, talked about not living in the gray area and making things, pretty much cut and dried for players to understand, from techniques to schemes to what he wants to get done on the field. And now we'll see if he gets it done. The 2 years at Notre Dame were really good for him as defensive coordinator. He had great success. He was a defensive coordinator back early in his career at Virginia, so he's got other defensive coordinator experience. He's been a head coach in college. Did a great job at Temple, a meh job at Miami of Florida, but there were some mitigating circumstances. And I think that's the thing here. For the faction that would say, well, he's never coordinated a defense in the NFL, it's a fair point. For the faction, though, that would also say, yeah, but look what he did at Notre Dame and the great success he had. Well, that's a fair point. I don't know if this is a good hire or not. I do know this, Mike, and I've said this, written this. Zac Taylor better make sure that he got this one right, because I don't know if he's going to get another chance to take a swing at the defensive coordinator spot. Again, I'm not here to pan it. I'm not here to praise it. All I know is that Zac Taylor better get this one right.
Here's the other thing I take away from Monday in terms of the Zac Taylor element of this, Skinny, is that familiarity is a big deal.
Yeah, no doubt.
And trust in who is working for him is a big deal. He's not going to go out on a limb. And most coaches are like this, right? You're going to hire who you know, who you trust to come in and work in your program and your operation. Totally get that. But with Al Golden has an intimate knowledge of this defense from his two seasons, 2020 and 2021, when obviously the Bengals made that Super Bowl run. But it was interesting to me that Zac Taylor made such a point to say that Al Golden is somebody I know, I trust, and I'm going to roll with how he inspires the team defensively. He made the same point about offensive coordinator Brian Callahan.
Dan Pitcher.
Yeah. Dan Pitcher, of course. Yeah. Made the same point about Dan Pitcher, and I think familiarity is a big deal to Zac Taylor. Maybe not as much as he's even going to let on. What's your feel on that?
Yeah, no, and I think some people also pan that concept, right? That all you're doing is hiring somebody you know and maybe not the best guy. What about Robert Saleh? What about Matt Eberflus? I get that faction of it too, but to the point of it, I think familiarity is a big thing for coaches. You're not just going to hire a buddy because he's a buddy. You're going to hire a guy that you're familiar with his work ethic, his work habits, the things that you think he can do. And
that's something else, by the way, Skinny, that Zac Taylor made a point of on Monday is I'm not just hiring a friend. I'm not just hiring a buddy. I'm hiring somebody that I know has the capability of getting the job done and has demonstrated to me before that he can run parts of our defense at an exceptional level.
Yeah, and look, you can pan the Lou Anarumo hire all you want, but he did have 6 years here and some really good ones, so that was a good hire. The hiring of Brian Callahan as offensive coordinator, his first offensive coordinator, was a good hire. Only reason he left was got a head coaching gig. Dan Pitcher gets promoted and did, I thought, a great job this past year as offensive coordinator. Again, he's not the play caller, but he's a big part of that offense's success. So Zac's had some success in making hires. About the only position I could tell you he probably hasn't has been offensive line coach. Jim Turner was an unmitigated disaster. And Frank Pollock, it just never seemed like they were on the same page together. So this is the third swing at that position group. But yeah, no, I have no problem with hiring somebody familiar, somebody who's coached on your staff, that you've worked with them, you trust them, you believe in them. And then, oh, by the way, while he was away, he went and coordinated arguably one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in college football the last 2 years and did it really well. So I think he's got that to fall back on in all this. So, yeah, I don't think this was just a buddy hire because, again, to my point earlier, Mike, he has to get this right. There's not going to be a, hey, we didn't make the playoffs because the defense was bad again and I get to hire another coordinator. No, that's not going to happen. I'm sorry.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's not going to be the case. So here we are.
I think one thing Bengal fans are expecting to see from this Bengal defense in 2025 is the ability to tackle in space. To me, Skinny, to my untrained amateur layperson eye, this Bengal defense fell off the last 2 years because they didn't swarm to the ball as effectively as they did in 21 and 22. They didn't gang tackle. They didn't finish the play defensively. And whether or not that was because they didn't have enough good players technique-wise to do that, or because the scheme was off with Lou Anarumo and he didn't fit the changes on defense with the personnel that he had, I don't know. But I will tell you that Al Golden spent a good amount of time on Monday talking about the ability to turn the keys, as he said, turn the keys over to the players and let them make the adjustments they need to make. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think this. I think he's trying just to come up with a concept of playing fast, right? Of making sure, keep stuff simple, play fast, get to the ball fast. That all sounds well and good as we sit here on whatever this is, January 28th, because we haven't seen them go through training camp. We haven't seen them tackle live. We haven't seen them tackle at all. It all sounds good, right? There's some things you can do in college that you can't do in the pros from a practice standpoint, especially when it comes to tackling. You can be probably way more physical in college football than you can in an NFL training camp because of what the players' union allows and doesn't allow. So
right.
It sounds
That's
good.
A great point.
I got to go back to this though. I mean, you need better players. Period. End of story.
Yes.
Again,
no question.
He was asked about development, and I think that's another reason you hired him. Is part of being a college coach is development. It's not just, hey, we got great players, let's roll out and go. No, there's a development aspect to that as well. And he even mentioned about, they played a lot of freshmen this past year at Notre Dame. Well, you don't play them without A, them being talented, but B, them also developing quickly. So I think that's another thing that's a key is getting some development out of guys. Because right now, for a lot of draft picks that they've been counting on, not just
right
adding to the roster, they've been counting on, they haven't come through. And is that a development? Is that the players? We're about to find out.
I think that Al Golden is going to have to go in and really get his message across in terms of discipline and technique. And you were with me, Skinny, in the scrum inside the locker room. After his press conference on Monday, we had a chance to do some one-on-ones, and TB had their opportunities to do one-on-ones. And in our little scrum, you heard me ask Al Golden about technique, about what does physical defense mean to you? What I found fascinating about his answer was it's not just beating up the guy in front of you. It's about making sure that when you win your physical battle, you are leveraging the player behind you or next to you to make the appropriate play in the scheme. And I'm like, wow, that is certainly next level thinking in terms of coordinating the defense. But he's not only got to say that, he has got to teach that,
yes,
especially to a lot of the younger players that you just referenced, Skinny. Guys like Trey Hendrickson, I think they know, first of all, he's on an edge. He has one or two missions, basically beat the guy in front of you, get to the quarterback.
Yes.
But for other guys along that defensive line where the Bengals struggled badly over the last 2 seasons, he's got to teach the technique. He's got to, obviously get across to the players that being physical is certainly crucial, no question about it, but you've got to do it with the right technique. And what did you think of all of that?
Yeah, no, I use that quote, and part of it he also talked about that, listen, if you're the guy being double teamed, don't spin out of your double team, because then you might get in somebody else's way, or you might get in, you might disrupt the play that you need somebody to fill in. The one thing I will say is this. I mean, we talked to Lou Anarumo each and every week, and a lot of the stuff he would talk about was, we had this many missed tackles. We missed a crack replace here, a crack replace there.
Right.
I mean, is that on the players? Is that on Lou not teaching it properly? Is that on maybe not getting across? That's, again, what's going to be interesting with Al Golden is the first few times we talked to him, we're going to hear about, that one run we didn't fit because we didn't have a crack replace. I mean, that's what you're supposed to be doing now. You're the guy that wants these guys to play in that manner of play fast, do your job. Maybe it is time for the new voice to teach those things, because they obviously weren't taking place under Lou.
What about Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt? Jermaine Pratt may or may not be on the roster come the fall, given the fact that he is, I would certainly say, a candidate for roster. I mean, for Cap casualty. Thank you for being, cut as a cap casualty. So he may or may not be here in the fall, but he certainly developed Jermaine Pratt, and he definitely developed Logan Wilson, who missed the, last 5 weeks of 2024 because of injury. What does Al Golden need to do to get those guys back to the level they were 2 or 3 years ago?
I just don't know if you're ever going to get Jermaine back to that level. I just think he's regressed year to year, and people are going to look at the raw tackle numbers this year and go, but look at all the tackles he made. Yeah, well, that doesn't necessarily spell the whole picture of what a linebacker does and does successfully. The point being, though, if you let Jermaine go, you don't have a ready-made replacement in the pipeline. I don't think Akeem Davis-Gaither is a starting caliber linebacker. I think he's a great third linebacker, certainly a great special teams guy. And if you need a spot start, Joe Bocce's the same way.
Right.
And we don't know what Logan Wilson's going to look like coming off the procedure he had on his knee. And he's had a couple other procedures over the years. And is he now at that age where you're like, it's a very physically demanding position. Is he able to give you what you once had? So I think that position group in particular is going to be really interesting, because I could see a world where Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson are the starting linebackers again. I can also see a world where it's only Logan, and I can see a world where it's maybe neither one of them. But at that point, then you got so many other places you got to plug your finger to fill and fix the replacements that, I don't know if you could have a complete overhaul of the linebacker room this offseason either.
All right. What about the secondary? Is there some belief or thinking on your end, Skinny, that they're going to have to come up with somebody next to Geno Stone, that Jordan Battle isn't ready to fulfill that role? Or will Al Golden come in, look at the film and go, there's enough I see with Jordan Battle as a downhill safety that he can still be a starter for us, and Geno Stone can be retooled, reworked, and still fit into what Al Golden wants to do on defense?
I think you're going to find out come March, Mike. I think that if they go out and sign a free agent safety, I think it's going to be a big indicator of either they don't believe in Geno Stone or Jordan Battle, or both. Maybe to your point, because it was asked yesterday of, what do you think of the current roster? And I thought it was a fair question. I thought his answer was fair too. I'm just now looking into that. That's kind of what I'm starting to do today. And maybe he does. Maybe he looks at both those guys and goes, no, there's workable parts there that I can fix and make them into very serviceable players. Or maybe it's he looks and goes, Stone can't tackle and Jordan Battle has no range. I got to fix that. But again, so here we're talking about so many places to fix. Are you looking to overhaul another position group there?
So, and to me, that's part of the dilemma between Al Golden and the front office, Duke Tobin and his staff. What are we going to stick with on defense, and what are we going to have to just say we have to overhaul, we have to bring in new pieces?
Well, right. Because the money's not ad infinitum, and a lot, we're going to talk about this in a little bit. Lots predicated on what it's going to cost us to re-sign Jamar. When that gets done, what do you do to re-sign T? You need at least one starting caliber guard. You probably need another edge rusher. There's a lot to fix in this offseason. And again, you can't then all of a sudden go, well, yeah, we could sure use an upgrade here. Well, you may not be able to afford an upgrade there. You may just have to have the new coordinator with a new voice make things work as is.
Speaking with Richard Skinner of Local 12, does a great job covering the Cincinnati Bengals for local12.com. Want to tell you about Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions, that's with a B, billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Now the big game is coming up, and for the big game, Patrick Mahomes needs only 1 passing yard. That's 1 singular passing yard for you to win 1 square. Philadelphia versus Kansas City in the big game. Here are some other options you want to be taking a close look at. Will Saquon Barkley rush for more than 112.5 yards? Will Jalen Hurts pass for more than 215.5 yards? Will Travis Kelce have more than 62.5 receiving yards? Will Xavier Worthy have more than 56.5 receiving yards? Be sure to check Prize Picks for up-to-date player projections. Download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use that code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. What about the two new defensive coaches, Skinny, in terms of Jerry Montgomery, defensive line, and Mike Hodges as the linebackers coach from New Orleans?
Yeah, and there's a part of me that I was in a chat group with some people, a couple of them that used to cover the Bengals here. They don't any longer. They're in different places covering NFL teams. It came up that I think they made a run at Hodges back in either 19 or 20, and when they couldn't get him, I think when he was with New Orleans, I think they blocked him from doing that, and that's when the Bengals wound up hiring Al Golden as linebackers coach. The Jerry Montgomery one's interesting just because of Zach talking about, how far back he remembered him and highly thought of him back, 5-6 years ago.
Green Bay in 2018, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Skinny.
That was interesting for him to bring that up. And obviously he knows Hodges because he was an assistant coach, a graduate assistant at Texas A&M when Hodges was there as a coach. So again, familiarity. I think the Montgomery one probably not familiarity more than just, hey, this is a guy that I've had my eye on for a long time, and finally got a chance to make him available and go get him. And that's doing your due diligence. That's probably writing a name on a piece of paper, years ago, and just saying, hey, if it ever comes up that I can get this guy for this position group, I'm going to try to get him. And he did.
Talking with my folks back in New England, Jerry Montgomery did not have an ideal situation with the Patriots in a singular year in Foxborough last year. And certainly give him some grace for the inability of that Patriots defense, especially second half of the season. I think they were at the bottom of the NFL or in the bottom 5 of defenses in stopping the run, which you don't want to hear as a Bengal fan. But I think you take a look at his 7 or 8 years prior to that with the Green Bay Packers, very highly respected. And I think one thing that Al Golden mentioned yesterday on Monday at his news conference was when you stay at one position for 9 seasons, that kind of speaks to how well you're respected and how much that organization trusts you at that job.
Yeah, and obviously it's been an underperforming group, the defensive line. Is it because Joseph Osai just isn't a very good player? Is it because Miles Murphy just isn't a very good player? Is it because we haven't seen enough of Chris Jenkins and McKinley Jackson? But that's been they threw a lot of money at that defensive line, and they threw a lot of draft picks and draft capital at that defensive line.
Yep.
And it's nobody's fault. It's not Marion Hobby's fault that Sam Hubbard is aged. It's part of the game. But outside of Trey Hendrickson and occasionally a flash from BJ Hill, it has been an underperforming group, and they need a new voice, and they need somebody else leading that group, and we'll see what Jerry Montgomery can do.
Well, it's overused sometimes in sports, but the whole thing about a new voice is needed. I think that's what it came down to. It's not that Marion Hoppe doesn't know the techniques of defensive line play. Sometimes you need a new voice, just like Al Golden will certainly be a new voice in place of Lou Anarumo. Jerry Montgomery will be the same in terms of replacing Marion Hoppe. What do you think of Scott Peters, King Jiu-Jitsu of offensive line coaches, taking over for Frank Pollock? I talked with Jeff Hobson, Butch Hobson, last week on the pod, and he thinks that it's an intriguing selection just because he could bring some Jim McNally technique and schooling to that job. And I think, whenever you mention that name to Bengal fans, that brings back the 70s and 80s and what it could be like, going forward for the Bengals offensive line. What do you think?
Yeah, listen, Frank Pollock obviously played the game, so he knows the techniques. It just didn't work here for whatever reason. But yeah, Jim McNally is a big hands and feet guy. He was big in hand movement, feet movement, and that's Mr. Jiu-Jitsu, right? Is hand and feet movement. And
right.
We'll see if that pays off. He's going to get a little bit of a mixed bag canvas to work with because you do have a vet in Orlando Brown. You're still in the development stage with Amarius Mims. Ted Karras is probably still anchored at center, but there's a good chance it's 2 new guards or at least 1 new guard. And
I'm not giving up on Cordell Volson yet.
I think he's a good third guard. I just don't think he's a starting caliber guy. Maybe the jiu-jitsu stuff will help him get a little quicker because
I think it will actually.
Yeah, and if it does, great. This would be if that's what he does is he makes a reclamation project of Cordell Volson and turns him into a serviceable starting guard. That would be a giant win right off the bat.
And, the reason I say that is I think with Alex Kappa, again, a cap casualty candidate for sure. I think, the Bengals probably might move on from Alex Kappa and rework the right guard position next to Ted Karras. But we'll have to wait and see how that all turns out. All right, on to another subject. You mentioned it earlier, and we just can't get away from it this offseason. The Bengals are going to have to get Jamar Chase done in the next couple of months. That's my feeling. I think if you're going to expect Jamar Chase not to be distracted like he was clearly last summer and in the first game of the 2024 season, that deal has to get done. Then perhaps the next domino falls is T. Higgins. What's your take in the last couple of weeks on this? Has anything changed in your thinking?
Yeah, I just fear paying 3 or 4 guys and not having a competent roster around it. That's my fear, but I get it. So the Jamar one's interesting to me. I'm kind of with you. If you're going to do this, let's go ahead and do it. Let's just get it done. Know where the money is. Know what's left financially. All of those things. If this lingers into camp, again, he's under contract for 2025 already. It's not like he's a free agent. He's still under contract. It's the rookie option, the 5th-year rookie option that was picked up. I mean, in theory, and I half joked about this with you guys last offseason. I said, it was up to me. I'd let him play through the 5th-year option. I'd tag him and then see where we're at. But I get that that's not going to happen. That's certainly not going to make him happy. And you know, you saw
there is the psychology of the game to me, Skinny. And yes, sometimes you want players playing angry, playing motivated.
Yeah.
With Jamar Chase, he's proven what he is.
No question. I'm with you.
And I don't think this is the case, Skinny, where you need to see if this guy is going to respond. That's not what this.
I'm with you on that.
Some fans might go, "Oh, let him go out and play angry again. Look what he did last year when he had a point to prove. Let him go do that again." I don't think you want to play that game with a 25-year-old entering or in the midst of his prime.
Yeah, I want to see where the money is now, and then what does that allow you to still do? Does it still allow you to resign T. Higgins? Because if you don't, here's the thing, and I've been in the camp that just says, hey, listen, and I'm still in this camp. For me, if you want to pay 1-star wide receiver, that's great. But there's so many good ones that come out nowadays. I'd rather have my second guy be on a rookie contract. T. Higgins played great on a rookie contract. Jamar Chase played great on a rookie contract. Guys can play great on rookie contracts these days. But after you sign those 2 guys and probably give Trey Hendrickson an extension, it won't be a lengthy one. I would assume it would be, pile another year onto the end of it, give him a good signing bonus, and that way you can prorate it over a couple of years. I don't imagine it's longer than that. I'm going to guess he's going to ask for that, or his agent's going to ask for that. But at that point, when you've paid the quarterback what you're paying him, the star wide receiver arguably is going to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. And then if you have to pay, if you opt to pay T. Higgins, extend Trey, there's not a lot left, in my opinion. There just isn't. And you got, like I said, you got a lot of spots you may need to fix.
Well, I mean, you bring up Trey Hendrickson, and I think that's a fascinating one simply because I think it's workable. I think Trey loves Cincinnati. I think he likes where he is here and what he's able to do, the freedom he has on defense. And the fact that he has his role well defined here, he's going to ask probably, like you said, 3 to 4 years. His representation is going to definitely do that. Bengals could come back 2 years with a 3rd-year option. The guaranteed money is really what you're talking about, really, in all 3 cases. This is not necessarily about the AAV,
right?
The average annual value of these contracts. It's about how much guaranteed cash do you have on hand to pay those 3 players? If you figure that out, I'm sure Katie Blackburn and Troy Blackburn are very busy in the offseason trying to figure out that number. What is it in terms of cash that we have to pay out guaranteed money? If you figure that piece of the pie out, then I think everything else will fall into place for the Bengals.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating leading up to the free agency period in March to see if what gets done, what doesn't get done. I mean, there's a part of me that does believe Jamar gets done between now and March, and then if worse comes to worse and you aren't in the ballpark or quite in the ballpark with T, you franchise tag him again and try to work out a deal before camp starts. Right. I know that sucks, but it's part of the tools you're allowed to have as a franchise. I mean, if players don't like it, go negotiate it out of the next NFL the collective bargaining agreement. So, yeah, I'm fascinated by this too because you're potentially paying 4 guys a huge chunk of your payroll, a huge chunk of your salary cap, and that's probably not a good way to do business. I mean, I hate to do this, but I mean, look at Kansas City's in the Super Bowl for the 3rd straight time with really young nobody wide receivers. I mean, they are. Well, they remade their defense, and that's their calling card at the moment.
Okay, you use Kansas City. And I think that's a great point. That's a great jumping off point for where I want to go next. And that is they have the star quarterback, they have the star tight end, and
Who's
they have
aging and not playing as well as he used to.
well, he may be retired after the
Well,
Super
yeah,
Bowl.
good call. Yeah.
And thirdly, you have Chris Jones, who you just paid last offseason. That's a very good comp to what the Bengals are facing. Go ahead.
Except for this, and you're right, I don't disagree with it, except for this. They have drafted so well on defense that they've got a bunch of guys on rookie deals that are performing at a high level. The Bengals don't. There's the difference.
And I want to get to that after we thank our great partners at Game Time, the Game Time app, the best way to get your tickets. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. What do I love about it? Curated deals make it easier to find the best price on great seats. Seat views. You can go online and see exactly what you're getting for your money and where you will be at the event. And the lowest price guarantee. Game Time ticket coverage. Your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time and your purchase covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use that code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we were talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and the comp there for what the Bengals have to do. They have to draft better, Skinny. We all know that.
Doubt.
They have to know how to build the roster around their star players. The Bengals' problem in the last two seasons has not been, and they should be credited for this, has not been their ability to evaluate their best players. It's been their ability to build a deep roster that's functional and can get you to the postseason, get you deep into the postseason, and win a Super Bowl. They have not been able to do that. That has to improve this year, period.
No, I agree. There's no doubt about it. You need to have guys on rookie deals performing, not 22 starters on rookie deals, but you need a handful of your guys who are starters to be on rookie deals, and a handful of guys on rookie deals who are also contributing in other ways as depth pieces. And that just hasn't been the case of late. I mean, it's why you had to sign Orlando Brown. It's why you had to sign Alex Kappa. It's why you had to sign Ted Karras. It's why you had to sign a tight end each and every year. And they've done a fairly decent job of that. I'll give him Mike Gesicki's been good. Hayden Hurst was good. Irv Smith was not, but they've done an okay job in that regard. But no, those are the things that you've got to be able to hit on some of this stuff.
Oh, and I think what really infuriates a lot of Bengals fans is they see the playoff rosters of the Chiefs, of the Eagles, players that were drafted ahead of a guy like Miles Murphy. And they ask, that could have been us.
Yep.
Why not us? I can't think of the Eagles pass rusher that had a great game against Washington. Name escapes me right off the top of my head. But they look at a player like that and go, why can't the Bengals draft like these other teams do? And, Al Golden, again, we go back to Al Golden on Monday. He mentioned the fact that he had, I don't know, half of the or not half, maybe a quarter of the players who contributed on his defense were freshmen this year.
Right.
Okay. And yes, they're not grown men yet, but they're freshmen in college competing on a team that competed for the national championship. Well, the Bengals need to have rookies come in, and first year and second year players come in and be big time contributors, not just guys who play maybe once in a while if somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, I mean, Miles Murphy is a perfect example of it. I mean, now we're going into year 3, and we still don't know what you have in that guy. Is he a bust? Is he a guy who just didn't perform under the last coordinator and last line coach? What will it take for the switch to go on for him? And I get why they made the pick. I mean, you were doing a preemptive strike. At the time, there was a thought that, all right, Trainich's usefulness is up here. We're not going to pay him any more money. We're going to let him walk, and we'll have a ready-made replacement, and or we'll have a guy as a rotational piece as well with him and Sam Hubbard and Hendrickson rotating. And it hasn't worked out. Miles Murphy has not done anything. I mean, I graded each Bengals player who played at least one game, Mike, about 2 weeks ago, and I gave 4 F grades. I did them alphabetically. I didn't look at a position group and go, okay, that guy, that. I literally went alphabetical, and when it was all said and done and the dust settled, 4 dudes got Fs. And they were all on the defensive line, and Miles Murphy's one of them. And I don't think I'm wrong in that grade. And that's what's got to be. You can't have a first-round guy in year 2 not give you anything. And he gave you literally next to nothing.
Okay, here's what I now that I have the Eagles roster up in front of me, thank you, our lads. Nolan Smith,
Nolan Smith
Jr., he was the pass rusher, obviously a first-rounder, but could have had somebody like a Nolan Smith. Jalen Carter, also back in 2023, a first-rounder. And even if the Bengals couldn't have had them, the point I'm making here is a bigger one, and that is you're having young players contribute on a Super Bowl roster. And Howie Roseman, the general manager with the Eagles, has been brilliant at this. One of the things I really admire about Howie Roseman is that team went out and got boat raced by Tampa Bay in the first round last year. They started, 10-1 last year and lost their last 6 games or 5 of their last 6 games. They were limping into the playoffs. They got just completely croaked by Tampa Bay on the road in the playoffs. What did Howie Roseman do? He went back, retooled the roster. You're talking about Jalen Carter, a first-round pick at defensive tackle, Jordan Davis, a first-round pick from 2022, Nolan Smith, the first rounder from 2023, along with Jalen Carter. Quinyon Mitchell, who the Bengals saw this year, a first rounder from 2024, starting right corner. Dejon Cooper, second rounder from 2024. That's their secondary, Skinny. And then Jeremiah Trotter, a fifth rounder from this year, big time contributor. And Sidney Brown, another defensive back from 2023, a third rounder. That is what the Bengals model should be there.
And that allows you to pay the quarterback. It's allowed them to pay both wide receivers, both Brown and Devontae Smith. It allows you then to go pay for Saquon Barkley. But you can't do those things if you're not hitting on your picks.
Correct. And that's what, and I don't know what the magic elixir is for the Bengals to go out and fix this. I don't know if Duke Tobin has to have somebody has to have a magic wand over Duke Tobin's head and just tap it lightly once or twice and go, okay, now you have the vision. Here are the players you should be taking to make the Bengals stronger and younger going forward. I don't know, Skinny.
No, I'm with you. I wish I had the answer for that, because it is very frustrating that, you've got another year of Joe Burrow behind you, right? I mean, you don't want these years to start adding up to where, you just can't get the roster completely right. Yeah, we got the quarterback. Yeah, we got the star wide receiver or 2. We just can't get the rest of the roster right. Boy, that would be such a waste.
If Joe Burrow had the opportunity to meet with Bengal management, what do you think would be his message, and what do you think should be his message?
Well, I mean, I don't know. He wants his guys paid. I get that. He's made that very public with us. I mean, he's done it numerous times in press conferences as the season wore on. I think that's pretty known. At the same time, I mean, I no offense, I can't listen to what my quarterback says. I have to make roster decisions based on what I think is best for the roster. Now, again, I'm not here to tell you it's not in the best interest of the roster to sign Jamar Chase at whatever price or to sign T. Higgins at whatever price. But, I mean, what else is Joe Burrow? He can say, we need better players. Well, sure you do. How are we going to get them?
Yeah, I do think it's important for Burrow to speak his mind, because I want the front office to know that my quarterback is not satisfied.
Absolutely. At the same time, though, I mean, I'll listen to what he has to say if I'm in management, but I'm not making my decisions based on him making whatever demands he might make. I get it. Listen, I think it was great that he went to bat for his guys. I think it shows how much he wants them around, how much he believes in them. I think all those are positive things. But at the end of the day, though, if me signing Jamar Chase at whatever guarantee it's going to be, and T. Higgins, and then I have to look at the structure and go, gosh, we don't have much to pay other guys, and we haven't drafted very well. What makes us think we're going to continue to draft well? I mean, that you're in a real quandary at the moment, in my opinion.
It's not about the X's and O's, though. If you're Joe Burrow and going into Duke Tobin or going into Katie's office, it's about the attitude and the urgency and what he feels.
Oh,
and
sure.
and to a degree, the frustration, anger, whatever word you want to use to describe what he was feeling as he was, coming to the realization another year is passing by without him even getting into the playoffs. He's got to let them know of his dissatisfaction. Not that he's trying to general manage the team. He knows, and he told us that in many news conferences this year. I'm not the general manager. That's not my job. But his job is to let the front office know that his desire to win and win championships is beyond reproach.
Well, and that's where those above Duke Tobin at some point have to hold him to the fire in this and say, listen, we've done this stuff, but we can't get the rest of it right. And who's in charge of getting the rest of it right for the most part? I mean, at some point that has to change too. And I think that would be the frustration level I would have of, listen, you're changing coaches. That's fine. You're changing this. That's fine. What about the guy who's putting this roster together? At what point do we hold him accountable for this? And it feels
Right.
like it feels like he's untouchable in that regard.
He shouldn't be, but because everybody should be touchable. Everybody should be held accountable.
Yes.
And in most cases, when you mention the word accountability, that's job security. And it remains
listen, Lou Anarumo got held accountable. Marion Hobby got held accountable.
Yep.
James Betcher got held accountable. Frank Pollock got held accountable. That's fine. I'm not here to tell you I don't believe Lou Anarumo is the problem with the defense, but that's an argument that I can make with people.
Again,
but
voice.
I get the accountability.
Right.
So you hold them accountable, right? So the next step is probably going to hold the head coach accountable. Well, at what point then do you go, well, maybe it isn't about the coach. Maybe it's about the roster construction. Who's in charge of that? Let's point the finger there at some point.
And then you get into really a metaphysical question, if you will. Is it the ownership or do you have a general manager? And that is another podcast in and of itself, Skinny.
It really is.
What are you working on local12.com?
Oh, Mike, I'm going to take a day or two off after all of this. I'm sure that's kind of where we're at. The combine is kind of the next jumping off point. I'll probably between now and after the Super Bowl's over, revisit a couple of prediction columns I did and see where I was right, see where I was wrong. Probably take a deep dive into the Bengals free agents of who you should bring back, who maybe you shouldn't bring back, who should be a cap casualty, who should you try to keep around and for how much. The typical off-season deep dives, if you will. And then obviously we're monitoring the contract situations for a couple of big players on this team.
He does a great job at covering all things Cincinnati Bengals and the NFL. His name is Richard Skinner. Follow him on the X at Local12Skinny. It is my pleasure, Skinny, as always, to have you on the pod. You are, to use a baseball metaphor, a home run every time.
Now you're a good man, Mikey. I appreciate it when you ask, and I'm taking those Eagles to beat those Chiefs in the Super Bowl, Michael.
As am I.
I'm going to your website to make the wager, and I'm gonna put a 5 spot on Jalen Carter to be MVP at 50-1.
That sounds great. You know what? I think I'm going to have Saquon Barkley as the Super Bowl 59 MVP.
It's probably the right way to go. I'm just looking for value. I'm looking for crazy value. I'm looking for somebody
that
maybe he has 4 sacks and goes off, and you just can't help but name him as the MVP. The year the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, Mike, I had a small wager on T. Higgins as MVP at 80-1. And I think if the Bengals had won that Super Bowl, T. Higgins might have been the MVP. Might have. It probably would have gone to Joe Burrow, but it might have been T. Higgins.
It would have been a close call for sure. All right. He is Richard Skinner of Local 12. My name is Mike Petralia, Trags. I want to thank our sponsors, as always, Prize Picks and the Game Time app, and our great folks at CLNS Media. He's Richard Skinner. I'm Mike Petralia, Trags. And until next time, keep that jungle roaring.